Hi, this is Alan Shay with Our Society, and I am so privileged to be here tonight with a gentleman who I've known, who's also been an incredible mentor for me as an individual. And I wanted to share his story with you viewers because I think not only is it powerful in and of itself because of his story, but also the fact that these things in life happens, and by being aware of them, of the type of issues that come up in our life and our families, by having an individual who demonstrate that he has the will and the faith, we can move our family unit together to overcome all the challenges of life. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Elias Ponsing, and today's story theme is called Truth, and hopefully viewers, you will embrace this story. So
I pray more, and I went back to the things I learned while I was in Catholic school. I learned how to pray the Rosary. I learned how to pray the Our Father and the Hail Mary in Spanish, because I would go to the services there that they had. They'd have services for everybody twice a week. They had Catholic services. I would go to them. They were all done in Spanish, but I was able to receive Holy Communion, and I felt good about that, you know.
So you never felt that there was injustice, or you were angry, upset about what had happened?
You know, I learned that not to worry about too much of the things that I had no control of. And this injustice that you speak of, I felt it, and I knew that this isn't right. It's just right. They gotta figure out a different way of doing these things. Because here I had all these life sentences, and you would read in the paper, because we get the paper there, the San Fernando Valley News, and you would read in the paper of these people killing sheriffs and murder and this and that, and they wouldn't never get life sentences. They get 20, 25 years. I said, wow, why is that so different than us for hearing a story or for touching someone, you know? Because that's what it kind of amounts to. A girl tells a story, and because they believe her, we're in jail until we can prove her innocence.
Right. So now, did you feel that there was injustice though? Because
Absolutely. I felt that it just was not fair. And I've always been, like I say, fair. Try to be fair in the way I treat people, because that's the way I wanted them to treat me. And I've been blessed with very good people, very good friends that I've had. Some friendships of over 60 years, some over 50, 30, 40 years, and they're still with me. And my friendship is going to get stronger with them, because it'll always be there. And it's just been great because they supported me and helped me and my wife get through this.
While you were going through this process, did you believe that you would lose this case because of the judicial system, and did you believe that they targeted minorities more so than any other group? Were there any feelings you had like that you were struggling with?
I've never been a prejudiced person. I've never tried to be. Maybe because it was of my upbringing, and I never felt that way, and it didn't enter my mind, because I figured, hey, we're all in this system, and it's the same system for all of us. So it just didn't feel right, because it would. And I believe my attorney, that I put myself in his hands, and he told me from the very beginning, I'm going to win this case. I'm going to get you out. So that's what I believed in, and that's what I prayed for him to get me out. To pray to God to give him the wisdom to fight and what to say for my defense, and to touch the heart of the district attorney, the people in the jury, the judge, not to ask for another trial, which I understood she has the power to do that 3 times. She can ask for another trial if she feels she can win it for whatever reason. And I just pray for that their hearts, that they wouldn't ask for that, and to have the jury listen to the evidence, go by what they're supposed to, what they hear and see, and find me innocent.
Okay. So why don't we share with the viewers, as you get ready to go to trial, and what that experience is and how you felt, especially when the prosecution started their case with the first witness.
I had to sit there. I was informed by the bailiff and my attorneys that I could not show emotion. I could not turn around and see who's supporting me. I couldn't do any of that. I felt that I didn't think it was fair. I was not allowed to turn around and say to the people, thank you, or thank you for being here, supporting me, nothing. Could not speak, could not make a gesture, couldn't wave, couldn't even look at him. And I was handcuffed all the time, and then he would handcuff me to the chair. And I was handcuffed like that. The only time my handcuffs were off of me was when the trial began. And he'd stand, the bailiff would be behind me, and I could sit with my hands on the table, show no expression, no emotion of any kind, no matter what it was I heard. Those were the rules, and I had to follow them.
So when they brought up the first witness, the prosecution, why don't you share with the viewers who that first witness was, and how difficult was that to hear the testimony and to wrap your emotions around being strong?
You know, the first prosecution was Alana, the 3.5-year-old, which was now getting close to be 5 or whatever, because it happened, like I said, 2.5 years ago. And she was the first one, and her story had changed. And I noticed it. Why is it that she never mentioned to her dad that I wanted to check for wetness? She never did that. And second, her story kept changing. She kept adding on more and more to the story. I said, how is that? How could that happen? But it did. She kept changing. And the more they asked her, the more she changed and added more stuff to the story. I said, that never happened. Then she claimed that I was in the van. I was never in the van. I was always standing outside with the door open. Yet, in her mind, I was sitting behind the driver's seat in the van with her. I said, no. What helped me was that when her father came, he said, no, that I was standing outside, that I was never in that side.
So
that's when otherwise he wouldn't be able to see me.
So as the second witness for the prosecution, it was her father whose testimony contradicted her testimony.
Yes, it contradicted. So all this was in my favor, because his story changed what she was saying. But it took a while, you know, for they kept calling her back. They called her back twice, and every time they heard it, they heard different things. So that was in my favor too. And then when my attorney would ask her questions, you could see that she would give one answer right now, and 15, 20 minutes later, she'd say another answer.
So she had a lot of inconsistency.
Yes, inconsistency in her statements. Mm-hmm. And thank God that the jury picked up on this, because they were told, you have to go by what the witness says and what you see and hear. That's what you have to judge this person on.
So when you heard that testimony come out from your great granddaughter, how did you feel? What was the emotions that were?
Well, the emotion, like I said, I had to keep to myself. I couldn't make an emotion of any kind. I couldn't make a face. I couldn't do nothing. I felt terrible. I felt terrible because I kept hearing different things from her, and things that never happened. But since she was older, I don't know why, but I think in my mind she says she's getting me mixed up with what her sister did to her, which I never did. She claimed that I had put 4 of my fingers into her vagina, and she's such a little girl. How can you get 4 fingers in there? But in her mind, I did. And I have a feeling this because it was her daughter, her sister was doing that to her, that she would contradict and confuse me with her. She's tiny, she's little.
Right. Wow.
I mean, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I just couldn't believe it.
And so then when the next prosecution witness came forth, which was your grandson, and he gave his testimony, did you feel that there was some justification because it contradicted, but also some very hurt feelings, or being somewhat hurt by other things that could have added to his testimony?
First of all, I couldn't understand. He explained that he was looking out the window the side, and that's what he was looking at. At that angle, the angle has a lot to do with it. Second, I figured, okay, in his mind, he's protecting his daughter. Now, I felt, hey, I probably would have done the same thing to protect my daughter. I can see the strong feeling between a parent and a child. A parent feels very strong against their children, and he would protect them as much as he could. So I didn't blame him for that too much, but he had his story all wrong. He had it all wrong. And the jury, my hands were around her little waist outside, and he said that because she was so tiny that my hands were on her butt, and that I was touching her butt because she was so tiny. And how could that be? I said, I had my hands on the outside. And he came, and the jury, I don't know, but I don't think that went over real well. But he kept insisting that yes. And then my attorney would question him. He says, oh yeah, if you got your hands on a little girl like that, you're touching her butt.
So once you're going through this trial here, and you have family members that are giving testimony, what was the most gratifying part of going through that experience? Because I know on one hand it was very excruciating and painful, but there had to be some parts in there that was truly gratifying, that showed that God had heard you and God was adhering to reinforcing your belief in your faith. So what part of this process, especially during your trial, did you see that?
I first experienced that because before, when the jury had been chosen and everything, I would be there at 8:30 in the morning, and we wouldn't let the jury come in till about 9:30, 9:15. But in that time before, my attorney and the DA would be arguing as to who was going to testify. The district attorney did not want my son to testify more because he had a record 20, 25 years ago. And I said, well, what does that have to do with this case? It has nothing to do with it. He's not going to talk about that case. He's only going to come in and tell us what he saw and heard. And that to me, when he won all that and he got his way, the district attorney was overruled and he got his way, not just on that, but a couple other witnesses that he allowed for them to testify in my behalf. I felt good because I felt that it was happening and it was finally going my way. And I saw it, and I thought it was one of the best things I heard and saw when I actually, because he went to the park with him, not me.
Right.
He heard what my grandson heard at the time the little girl was saying. And all he did was say the truth, what he heard. He's under oath. He said, I'm going to go and say the truth. And to this day, his son is very upset with him because he took my side instead of his side. And they're not speaking to each other. It broke up the family. To this day, it just breaks up the family. It hurt me and my wife. Our relationship got even stronger because how we missed each other and how she supported me and my friends. Everything got stronger. My friendship got stronger. My faith in God got stronger. Everything got stronger.
So why don't you share with the viewers, really, since we're speaking of the truth as it relates to being challenged in life, and certainly the uncertainties that a situation like this can bring into a family.
Yes.
What did you learn about who really had your back, as they say, in life when you saw who supported you and the kind of turnout, and what did that mean to you?
It meant a lot. First of all, I was able to see my granddaughters speak in my behalf, my daughter, my son, my wife. I saw that, and my faith in God got stronger because I finally was seeing that what I was praying for was actually happening. And I just kept getting stronger on that, and my faith, I started to believe my attorney more and more, and I thought for sure that we were going to win this case. Because before, what happened was the 7 counts that they had, the 7 life counts that they had against me, when that girl, the 14-year-old, was interrogated, they found that she was so much discrepancy in her answers, and she would say one thing right now and then say another and kept changing and this and that, And her attorney says, I don't want her to testify. I am going to have her plead the fifth. And then I said, well, the DA says, if she pleads the fifth, that's no good. The jury is not going to like that at all, and they're going to find him innocent. Well, then he says, I don't want her testifying. So somehow or other, God listened to my prayers, and they took those 7 counts away. They dropped them, and they would not let her testify, which was given to her by her attorney. Said, no, I don't want her testifying. And the little girl agreed not to testify. And that was the end of that. And that helped my case tremendously.
So
that was the turning point when I thank God and says, thank you, Lord, thank you for listening.
So why don't you share with the viewers, and this kind of will bring them to a full cycle. When you had the opportunity to have your day in court, what did that feel like, and how do you think you conveyed yourself to the jury?
Even that was a little funny because my attorney says, you know, he really doesn't have to testify because the burden of proof is on the district attorney and so on. I don't have to testify. But I told my attorney, I want to testify. I want to tell my story. I feel that it's very important. So we had to argue that point because she wanted to bring up Ruby. And it had already been said by the judge, no, you can't do that. That dropped. Everything's been dropped. She's gone. It's over.
So for the viewers to understand, you had the 14-year-old who made the 7
accusations. Yes.
Those were dropped.
They were dropped.
And they were only dropped shortly before you took the stand. So
Yes.
they were part of your original case, criminal
Exactly.
case that you were
Yes.
getting ready to go to trial.
Right. And they were dropped because that was a decision made by her attorneys and the district attorney. They could see when they started to interrogate her, there was something wrong with her stories. They were not tracking, they weren't consistent. So this is not going to work. So everybody was in accordance to drop them, and that's what happened. And then to me, I felt that it became an easier case for my attorney, even with everything the way it was, my attorney felt that he could find me innocent and he could prove to the people that I was innocent. And then when this happened, it became obvious to all of us that it was going to be a little bit easier. How much easier, I don't know, but I felt it, he felt it,
Right.
and it turned out that way.
So with your testimony as a witness, you took the stand.
Yes, and I finally got my chance to say my story, and I felt very good about it. I was nervous, but I should. I had butterflies, you know. He said that maybe I was going too fast or giving too much information. He says, calm down, wait till I ask you the question before you answer it. And I did the best I could. The following, I had to do it for 2 days. The second day, after he kept telling me that, I was much more calm. I had already gone through it, and I found that I wasn't as nervous as I thought I was going to be. And it just turned out to be really good. I felt good because I got to say my story, like the way I explained to you right now.
Correct.
It was just a simple, innocent diaper check.
Right.
And because and a lot of people in the jury, in my way of thinking, they knew because they have children and they've done that themselves.
Sure.
And I figured they're going to understand what I'm talking about because they've done it themselves. And it's very innocent. And it turned out to be that way.
So why don't you share with the viewers, once you gave your testimony and you had completed your testimony on witness stand, what did you think of the prosecutor's closing and your attorney's closing to give you a sense of, again, did God hear you?
Yes, it was unbelievable. I felt, after I finally testified, I felt good of what I did, and my attorneys told me that you did good, you did real good. You know, we couldn't talk loud, I sat in between both of them, and he whispered to me, and he said, you did very good, you did great. So I felt good. And then I said, thank you, Lord, thank you, God, for letting me say my story. And I thought that everything was going much better. Then my attorney, they had to have what they call their closing arguments.
Yes.
And when I heard my attorney give his closing arguments, I thought he did a wonderful job because he would get the question that the district attorney would ask that little girl Alana, and it's on record. He says, look, ladies and gentlemen, it's on record. This is what she said. And you could see the inconsistency.
Right.
And he would bring that out because the district attorney asked those questions and she would say yes here and no there and then go back to no and yes, and all that was brought up. But what I thought was unfair was the fact that he could only do that one time and the district attorney could do it twice.
Oh, okay.
That to me, I said, that's not fair. After she did hers, and then she came back and tried to counter his things, and then she could do it again, and my attorney could not.
Right, right.
I thought, well, that's the last thing they're going to hear is her side.
Correct. And in hearing her side, did you think, or did you feel that she gave a very strong closing as well, or did you figure hers was kind of weak, or what?
Well,
what
I thought she did cover a lot of the questions. She countered. He would say, think of this man as marriage, and so don't think of him as marriage, or try to restore this man's life. That has nothing to do with it. You have to go by the evidence that you're hearing and seeing, and then she would bring up the good questions of her. You know, she would ask, and she would get the questions that were against me, or the positive answers that she had against me, and she brought them up again. So all these things, wow, this is not good. My attorney, I knew that he wanted to say something, but he couldn't. Well, it's over. But then the most wonderful thing happened. My attorney says, I'm going to go talk to you, because he knew I was going to be taken back to the cell. I couldn't be there.
Right.
It had been handed over to the jury. I could not be there, so they took me back to my holding cell, and he wanted to talk to me, so they did. He come over, we're talking, and as we're talking, I think we only talked for about 3-4 minutes, and the deputy comes and says, hey, the jury already turned in a verdict. You got to go back to the courtroom. He says, what? What? And I said, wow, I can't believe it. And I was so nervous. I said, this is very, very nervous for me. How can it happen so fast? And sure enough, I was able to put my tie back on and everything, and go back on there, and then the jury handed, and this lady read it, and oh my God, it was 100% innocent. Every one of them voted innocent on the both counts that they had against me. And I cried to God, and I can't help it, I get emotional, and I'm crying, and my friend of 60 some odd years was next to me, and all I could do was hug him. We both cried as we hugged each other, and I said, thank you for what you've done for me, and thank you. And then they started to handcuff me because they were going to take me back to my cell, because my attorney says I would like to have him released immediately. And the judge, I heard him say, fine, he can be released from here instead of being taken back to Wayside. And I was so happy, I cried, and I thanked God. And they took me to my cell. But as they were handcuffing me, I told him, bailiff, could I hug my attorney? Please let me hug him. And he says, go ahead. And he picked up my hand with a cuff, and I was able to hug him. And I said, thank you. And I couldn't stop crying. I was so happy. These were tears of happiness. And my faith in God got so strong that when he took me back to the cell, I fell to my knees and I cried. And I thanked God for what he did for me. And I can't help but get emotional every time I talk about it, because it was such a strong feeling that I had in me. You get chills all over, and you feel so strong about your faith. And I think that I've come out of there a better man. I'm gonna treat everyone in my life better. Friends, wife, family, everybody better, because I miss them so much. And you appreciate what you have. You don't know how much until you miss it. And once you don't have it, it's taken away from you. You can't help but appreciate what you have. The little things, the life, the good people, little things at home. Like I'm not cold anymore. I'm warm. I've got a long sleeve shirt. I'm allowed to have it. I have a vest. I'm warm. I'm comfortable.
So after the verdict, which was what, 15 minutes?
Yes. The judge, my attorney tells me later on, he says, that was the fastest I've ever had in all these years. I've never had a verdict come in so fast, because it usually takes a 1 day, 2 days, maybe sometimes 3 days. He said, this was the fastest verdict I ever had in my life. And we both hugged, and I could feel that he almost cried with me because we were so happy. And I said, thank you for what you did for me.
So by the end of this process, were you able to join up with your family?
Yes. That right away, when I went back, the sheriffs were there, and he says, the bailiff tells him, he's been found innocent, and please, we're gonna release him from here. I already had my street clothes, I had my coat and everything that I'm supposed to have during the trial. I had my street clothes. So one of the sheriffs says, so he's gonna go out with that? And he says, yes. And then she told me, bring out your uniform, your boots, that everything that belongs to the county, and put it in this bag. And then she got on the phone, called Central Jail downtown, and told them such and such a person. I gave him my number, which is 422-7018. I memorized it. And he says, and he has been released from here. He's not going back there. So then get the ball rolling. And they started getting all the process and everything they have to do on the computers or whatever, I don't know. And the court ended a little before 4, and by 6:30, 6:40, I was released.
Wow.
And I come out to the most wonderful thing. All my friends that were there in the audience listening to this were waiting for me outside. And there again, I hugged my wife, which is what I wanted to do for so many times, just to touch her. And I was able to hug her and hold her and kiss her and tell her that I loved her so much. And I did it in front of my friends and family, and we did that. And one of my niece was able to capture it all in the video. She captured the moment, and I felt so good about that. That everybody stayed there to wish me well. It was the most wonderful thing that's ever happened to me, and I said I thank God for the experience that I had. And to this day, I'm still praying my rosary every day. I don't think I'll ever stop. And I says, please, I'm going to prove to you, I'm going to do good deeds. As an example, I says, I'm going to the convalescent hospital here. I'm going to go to the person in charge and says, I would like to visit a man who hardly ever has anybody visiting him. People forget they're there and say, I want to listen to him, I want to hear his story, I'll maybe pray with him, do whatever, but I want to visit him. If he wants me there every day, I'll show up every day. If he wants me there every other day, to me, that's a good deed. Makes me feel good, and I'm doing something good for someone else. And then I figure, the priest, my pastor, who came here and we cried and hugged together, we cried with each other, says, give me some ideas as to what I can do. I want to do some good deeds. I want to do something good.